Hi, Adam Gower here, and welcome to the real estate crowdfunding show syndication in the digital age at gowercrowd.com. Now, when I was writing my latest book, due to be published by Routledge later this summer, I found myself double guessing my own instincts on one important concept. The book's called Real Estate Crowdfunding, an insider's guide to real estate investing online. And basically, it's about real estate financial terms, but it starts out with a high-level overview of real estate crowdfunding. And what I found myself doubting was whether or not to include this idea. That while one of the greatest ways to build wealth is through real estate investment, and one way to do that is to own a home, many people have been excluded from being able to buy a home because of prices and down payments and qualification for loans, etc. So, while not wanting to appear to be discouraging home ownership, I suggested that investing in real estate through crowdfunded syndication could be an alternative to those who can't afford to buy a home. Well, my guest today, Calvin Cooper, who is co-founder and CEO of Rhove, has developed an innovative solution to this quandary by providing apartment dwellers a way of owning a piece of the building in which they live. It is very cool and very interesting. What you're going to learn from Calvin is exactly how the idea works, as well as how he communicates a novel idea like this to both sponsors and tenants alike. You're going to find it absolutely fascinating. And one more thing before we get started today. I just revamped the gowercrowd.com website and I'm testing some new ideas to improve conversions on the site. So go to gowercrowd.com and sign up for anything that tickles your fancy. It may be from a pop-up or a sidebar call to action, a form on a page, or free training. But whatever it is, sign up for something and you'll get access to some free goodies as well as receive some automated emails. You can always unsubscribe, of course. But importantly, if you like how it works when you do that, right? Cool CTA, get some valuable info, good email follow-up, etc. Think about how that could work for you. And let me know if you'd like me to show you how you can do the exact same thing to raise capital on your own site for your deals, right? So go ahead, test it out at gowercrowd.com. Let me know what you think. Okay, so now learn how even apartment residents can come to own a piece of the building in which they live from innovator, pioneer, and democratizer of commercial real estate, Calvin Cooper, co-founder and CEO at Rhove. Calvin, thank you so very much for being on my podcast today. I've actually had a bit of a break from podcasting. I've been working on a ridiculously ginormous, intensive campaign to raise money for a client that is beginning to wind down. So I'm so happy to be doing podcasts again. Here's what I've got to ask you. So simple as this. I looked at your website and it says at the very top, don't just rent, Rhove. So my first question to you is, explain.
First of all, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I think what you're doing is so important, democratizing access to this multi-trillion-dollar real estate market. And so I'm pumped to dive in. To answer your question, don't just rent Rhove. Rhove is really built on an old idea. It's an idea as old as Rome and before that. In fact, Aristotle talked about this, James Harrington talked about it, John Adams, our second president, talked about it, that ownership, land ownership is critical for democracy. It's something that is so important. And so what Rhove is a way for renters to have a stake in where they live. Our vision for the world is quite simple. It's that every renter is an owner.
It's absolutely fascinating, actually. And I did mention this to you in one of the emails back and forth before we set this up, that in the book that I have coming out later this summer, I actually touched on this. I touched on this idea that with the accessibility to direct home ownership becoming more and more distant or harder and harder, that one way to participate in the benefits of owning real estate is to invest via crowdfunding. So what is so interesting to me is that you have converted the idea of apartment rental into ownership. So tell me a little more about actually how that works, because it's an absolute, as far as I can say, it's a brand new concept that's actually being applied. So just if I was a renter, how would you explain it to me?
Yes. So as a renter, if you live at a property offering rentership, you're a stakeholder by default. You move in and you can download our app and just claim a stake in your apartment. It's as easy as downloading the app, setting up your profile, and you automatically own a stake in that property. So let's say that's a $50 stake. You can choose to buy more in single dollar increments. You can hold on to your stake and receive cash distributions. So the minimum rent return is a 5% return on your stake. And you can hold on to that, sell it anytime. But if you choose to hold it, if the building sells or is refinanced in a way that causes a distribution to ownership, then you receive value for your stake as if you were an owner. So let's say you had $1,000 stake in the property and you accumulate that over the year and you just stop buying. You just have $1,000 stake. You're gonna get $50 in distributions throughout the year for every year that you hold on to that stake. If the property grows in value over time, let's say it grows by 10% and there's a distribution ownership, your stake would be bought out for $1,100 in that example. So you would have received $50 every year that you held on to that stake and $1,100 to retire your stake in the property. So effectively, you maintain the flexibility and freedom and amenities of renting, the live, work, play lifestyle, but we're adding into that own. You get some of the economic value that homeowners receive when they own their home.
Fantastic. All right. So that's very interesting. All right, let's start diving into the weeds a little bit, if you don't mind, Calvin. Here I am. I'm a property owner. I own a 100-unit apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work and how does it benefit me? I mean, let's just start with this. I have to say that is the obvious, and the obvious is loyalty, presumably, right? That somebody is going to be incentivized. And I did read your rent agreement. I forget what you call it actually on your website. I scanned it. I didn't read it in detail, but I see that you have to renew to vest in the property and in the investment you got to renew. But how do the finances work from an apartment owner's perspective? What are the financial benefits to an owner of employing Rhove?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, we've been really inspired by the number of owners that have reached out. There's many people who view real estate as their art and their contribution to building communities. So that's usually the first reason people are reaching out. They're like, wow, this is an idea that needs to happen in the world, and I want to be a part of that. The second reason is, as you mentioned, it's a tool to attract, engage, and retain tenants in a transformational way. You're really turning every renter into a stakeholder, changing the mindset. But third, from a financial perspective, some owners choose to receive capital up front. You're really paying 6%, so 5% for the rent return to residents and 1% for our fee to create this pool. So it's a way for some owners, it's a way to receive some cash to create this opportunity for their residents.
So if somebody has $1,000, I'm just picking easy numbers, right? So if someone has $1,000 a month in rent and they choose to participate in this program, what are they doing exactly? I saw something about matching funds, and so if I decide I want to invest 5%, so every month I want to add $50 to invest in the building. Where's that money going? How's it being used? How's it being matched? I was missing some of the details.
Yeah. Part of that is, so what you're talking about, the matching program, was a pilot that we created that a lot of owners, it was never intended to grow in the market. We wanted to create Rentership because I made the mistake of calculating how much rent I spent in the past 10 years. And I'm like, wow, I don't want to buy a home The math doesn't make sense. I'm going to have to the break-even point is 5 years out. It's so expensive. It's actually cheaper to live and work and rent in this neighborhood that I want to be in. I don't have the down payment. I was a venture capitalist at the time. So if I'm having a problem in Columbus, this is a massive problem in the market. So we wanted to create a product where renters could just own a piece of the building they lived in. To get the market really quickly, to build the technology and everything we needed to build Rentership, that took some time. So in the interim, we wanted to learn from the market. So we launched a savings match product really just to do that. So anything like on our website currently that's talking about the savings match program, that is a different product than Rentership. So okay. Sorry to confuse you there.
That's all right, but that's okay, Calvin. Don't worry, I'm extremely easily confused. So let's try and dumb it down even further just for me.
Yeah.
So now from all right, so let me explain it from my perspective and see if you can help me understand exactly. Mm-hmm. So the world that I live in is sponsors want to, let's say, buy a $10 million building, right? Yeah. An apartment building, right? Just for example. And so they're going to need to raise 3 million or so of equity. So they go out to the market and they go to high net worth accredited investors, and they invite those investors to invest with them. When those investors invest with them, there are various terms. It may be that they get a percentage of any growth in the value of the building. They'll get a preferred return that pays some kind of interest. And the value that the sponsor gets is that they get that investor's cash for which they pay returns as part of the bargain. So what is it with renters? This is a program for owners who already own a building. So yeah. How are they using that cash, especially if they've got to pay it back? I mean, I'm not quite understanding what's going on.
Imagine you've got this $10 million project, right? And you might raise money from LPs. Maybe you pay an 8% preferred return. You might distribute cash throughout the year, quarterly or monthly, right? 8%. So that's your capital stack. Let's say you want to implement Rentership in your building and you want to create a $100,000 pool. Then you would receive $100,000 from us and you would pay 6% on that pool. We'll invoice you monthly. And then we have a per door fee. So let's say that's $5 a door and it's a 100 unit building. So in that model, we would invoice you $1,000 a month and it's just a flat rate. And now Rentership's implemented in your building. Renters who live there can claim a stake. They can download our app. They can buy into that $100,000 pool that we created. And as we invoice you, the owner, for the 5% plus our 1% fee, then we're going to distribute the 5% rent return to the residents in our app. So the residents have our app. They have an FDIC insured FBO account with us at Evolve Bank, and they can just let the funds sit there or pull it out anytime.
And it's a loan to the property, is it, Calvin? You're making a loan. It's not an investment in the property. Is it a loan? It's not an investment.
It's not debt or equity. Technically, it's a contract right that we're creating. It's a vendor contract between Rhove and the owner that establishes this rentership pool. And some owners just want to create the pool and sell it down to residents directly. Some would like an advance on that pool. And so we would advance you the $100,000 and we'll start invoice you a flat rate, that 6% plus the per door fee. So if it's a $100,000 pool and 100 units, then you're going to pay $1,000 a month, just a flat rate. And now you have this transformational program at your project.
Got it. So the value from the property owner's perspective is that they are creating an incredibly loyal tenant base. Is that the primary advantage? They're getting a check for $100,000 on day one that they can do with what they want, presumably.
And if you just fully load it, like let's say it was a $100,000 project, $50 per year grant to residents, and the $5 per door fee. You're really talking about all in the cost for this concession being like $100 to $200 per door for this if it were just a cash concession, right? And many owners pay a lot more than that to acquire and retain residents. They're giving out $600 Visa gift cards and all these things that don't create lasting value for the community. So this is a very value add kind of concession that you can roll out in your project that transforms the relationship between renters and owners. And so from a pure play perspective, you might think about this like a concession that you're rolling out in your building that you might receive cash up front for.
It's very interesting. All right, so you write a check to that owner for 100,000. So they get 100,000 on day one, and they pay a 6% fee, let's call it, right? So on a monthly basis. And then on your side, you now go ahead and promote that to the tenants. So from the owner's perspective, they're getting a big check on day one that they have to pay interest on. So it kind of functions, you say it's not debt and it's not equity, but it kind of functions in a similar way. There's cash coming in, it could be equity, it could be debt. They have to pay interest on that in real time. The value that they receive for that, apart from the 100,000 that they got, that they can do whatever they want with, right? Fix the roof or whatever they want to do with it, is that you are now, your value proposition is now that tenants have a vested interest in staying in the property. So tell me just a little bit about that side of the value proposition. What is it? Because I do recall tenants are vested when they renew, right? So there are some clauses that tenants have, or some terms that tenants have to meet in order to vest.
That every year they're a tenant, they get another grant. So let's say that was a $50 stake just for moving in and being a resident. Next year they'll grant another $50. They'll be granted another $50 stake. So you could use this as an incentive program for renewals. But every resident, like I move in, your leasing agent might have a piece of print collateral. We have email channels, and we support every aspect of the marketing of this. We make it really easy for the leasing agents to talk about this as an amenity of the property. So you tell a tenant who's looking to sign a lease there, hey, not only do we have a wonderful pool and a fitness center, we're centrally located, and every resident who lives here is a stakeholder. What? Every resident who lives here is a stakeholder. Just download the Rhove app and claim your stake. You'll get $50, and you're now an owner of a stake in this property just for living here. And you can buy more on your own terms if you want to.
So your tenants, the tenants in a building, in this example that we're talking about, Calvin, there is a limit of 100,000 in this example that you could accept. So let's say a tenant walked in on day one and they said, hey, Calvin, we really like this. I'd like to invest, or I'd like to give you 100,000. I want 100,000 in here. Could they do that?
We have a $500 a month limit right now for residents because we want everybody to participate. This is really about democratizing ownership in the community. So if we sell out quickly, we could just do another deal with the owner. We get an appraisal, create another pool. But for now, we want to limit that because, there's a few people in each building, if they realized how great of just from a pure financial product this is, they would absolutely dump as much money as possible into it. You've got a 1x preference with a 5% minimum rent return and exposure to the sale value of the property. It's amazing. It's a wonderful deal.
It is very interesting.
Some people would be like, instead of a down payment, I'll just shift that and put that into this rentership pool and own a stake of the building I live in now.
Yes, and that's actually exactly what I was talking about in my book. When it comes out, you can see it. I was a bit hesitant when I wrote it because I was concerned people might think I was suggesting you don't buy a house, which wasn't the point. The point was that it's sometimes very difficult, right? You might save enough for you might save and save and save and still never have enough for a down payment. And so what that means is all those savings, they're never going to go into real estate, which is something that you might want to invest in. And so if you can invest through crowdfunding, was my point in the book, you do get an interest in real estate. And in your case, it's actually where you live, which is what makes it unique, actually. So somebody says, all right, I want to invest 500. So they pay their rent, their $1,000 a month rent, and then they can add 500 to that. Or that's a relationship they have with you, is it?
Right. So they pay their rent the same way they normally do. They download our app separately. They claim their stake. They can buy more. It feels like Robinhood or any other fintech app that you might be used to, where people buy public equities. But instead of buying a public equity, they're buying a stake in the place that they live.
And but they're buying that from you, right? So you're buying it first from the owner, and then they're buying a share of that from you. So what are the terms that you have with owners? You've got some kind of profit split. It does function like an equity investment as well, doesn't it? If the value of the property goes up, so does your 100,000 stake. So how is that structured?
Yeah, that contract right is as a percent of the sale value. So in that earlier example, if it were a $10 million valuation project, $100,000 is 1% of the sale value. That building appreciates and you sell the property for $10.1 million, then you buy the pullout for $110,000.
I see.
We distribute it to the stakeholders accordingly.
So you're actually
not equity or debt. It has no collateral interest in the property. It's completely standstill. And it provides some of the economic value in this contract, right?
Gosh, what a fascinating idea. All right, so tell me, how do you market this? I told you right at the beginning that this is, kind of the core of my podcast and business at the moment is marketing ideas. So tell me how you do that. What are you doing?
So it's evolving. I mean, you're reaching. We launched this at Gravity 3 weeks ago.
I noticed June 2000.
You are on the front edge, like the cutting edge of this. I mean, you're reading things, about our last product that are really pilot that allowed us to build all this technology to do this. So we're learning every day, but really it's just what we're saying, and people are resonating with our very simple vision that every renter should be an owner by default. This isn't an investment product. This is about home ownership with zero barriers of entry. And so that's how we're marketing it, because that's what it is. And as you mentioned before, people are saving up money and the barriers to home ownership are getting higher and higher. Millennials have $0 in net real estate wealth, $0. That's horrible, right? And the implications for society are going to be very profound. So we need to do something about that. And I believe that the way to do something about that is to help people own a piece of where they live. This is about community. This is about getting value from the place that you're giving value to. It's about fairness. And so that's what we're talking about. And then people can do their own math. Like if they want to use this to compete with home ownership, throw a couple $100 a month into it. And for the first few years, you're actually getting more value than home ownership because there's a J curve when you buy a home because of all the fees, right? And so our vision is that over time, we will create a product that is better than home ownership. One where you have the flexibilities, amenities, and freedom and no barriers of entry like you do with renting, but you get as much or more economic value than home ownership. That's where we're gonna take the product. Right now, we're just taking a step in the right direction. So as you know, owning a home correlates with public markets. After paying for all the transaction fees and closing costs that come with buying a home, you're really making 8 to 10% per year, right? ROI. And with rentership, you're getting a minimum of 5% just in cash distributions. So we're closing the gap right now.
So just a quick technical question. When somebody gives you their $500, what are they getting in return? Is it a security? Are they getting a share of an LLC, or what do they get actually in return?
It's not a security. It's an economic right. It's a rebate on rent, actually. It's a variable transferable rebate on rent.
Really?
And so only residents who live there can buy in at this
Is that
time.
right?
Because it's not a security. We're not creating an investment product. We're creating home ownership. And we're making it accessible in single dollar increments. And in order to do that, we had to make it easy to fit within the financial stack and business arrangement that owners have, right? And so it would be very difficult to create some kind of security. So we had to find a different way to approach this.
And so it functions like a rent rebate.
But
so that $500, is that
transferable?
Completely transferable as well.
Mm-hmm.
So did they get a certificate or something? No, like seriously, like a stock certificate.
You know what's really interesting? We are developing a rentership certificate. That will be a digital experience that people have. But they are buying a unique thing. So we create a 100,000 unit, $100,000 pool. We'll create 100,000 individual rentership units. And so when people buy, like let's say I'm a renter, I claim a $50 stake and then I buy it. It's got $500 worth of warranty. I have 500 rentership units, and each unit entitles me to a 5% of that value. So it's a flat return. So for every dollar, that's 5 cents a year, and a percent of the sale value of the property.
Now you're talking to millennials, right? This is your target market. I like to think of myself as a millennial, a late blooming millennial. And it's an interesting proposition you have. At the highest level, it's really easy to understand. Own a piece of the apartment building that you live in. But when you get down into the weeds, it takes a bit more explaining, right? Even to me, I'm having a hard time.
Concept. People, like even home ownership is hard to understand. People don't understand oftentimes what a warrant is and what is equity and, things like capital stacks. They just understand value and principles. And so we're not marketing this as like, buy this complicated financial security. It's like own a stake in the building that you live in. The value of your stake is tied to the sale value of the property, and you get a 5% minimum return. You can sell it anytime you want to and get at least your money back. It's simple. Now, if you want to go in and read the fine print and all the details and talk about how we accomplish that from a legal and financial perspective, that's like diving into like the database strategy or technical strategy to create some, a mobile app solution. You might as well be talking about that.
It is so true. You're absolutely right about that. So how are you marketing it? What are the tools that you're using? What's your biggest challenge at the moment? Finding sponsors that have buildings, or what's challenging at the moment with getting this off the ground?
Time. We're moving, time is our biggest challenge. Owners are reaching out from all across the country and even the world. We're taking a lot of meetings. But our biggest focus is really delivering value to renters. That's who we're here for. And so I wouldn't call it a challenge. We're learning. I was really excited by how many people on the first day of launch downloaded the app, went into the app, and purchased RNT, bought a stake in the building. And a lot of people did it with no questions because it's simple. We're not talking about all these complex legal strategies. What we're talking about is every renter should be an owner, own a stake in.
Hold on 1 second. Believe it or not, working out of the bloody house, the gardener. Hold on. Sorry. Bloody gardener with his blower. He's going to go back in a minute. So when I go on mute, just keep talking because I've got some mad blower going on behind me.
Okay.
Where were we? I lost track because I thought he might go somewhere else.
Oh, you're fine.
We were talking about marketing and how you articulate this, like your biggest challenge. That was my question, wasn't it?
So you asked, what is our biggest challenge? We thought that it would be finding property owners that were interested in turning renters into stakeholders. And that wasn't a challenge at all. We're getting tons of owners reaching out every day to talk about this and explore. But what we're learning is just time. We need time to execute. I mean, we launched this 3 weeks ago, and here we are on a podcast, right? So it's about time. On the first day of launch, a bunch of residents bought into the building and didn't have any questions. They educated themselves from our FAQs, and that's really because this is a very simple value proposition. Every renter should be a stakeholder. Every renter should be an owner. Claim a stake in the building, buy more, you'll get cash on your stake, 5%, and the value of that grows with the value of the building. And so now our task is just to execute, to keep up, to continue to learn from renters, iterate how we're talking about this, and be really focused on value, who our customers are.
Now, when you put that, let's say 10 people this afternoon give you a call and say, we want you in our building. That's now $1 million, right? If 100 people come to you, well, that's $10 million. So you've got to have the cash in order to be able to fund the investment in each one of these properties. How are you capitalizing that? Is that something that you have individual finance for, or as like, how are you financing? Are you crowdfunding that? How are you doing that?
It's a venture-backed technology business. And so the first few deals, we're going to work with partners. We're going to be very selective about who we work with. But we fortunately, we're not fundraising. We're well capitalized. Long-term at scale, there's a lot of different options for financing those projects. It's a profitable deal. We can handle that. There are some owners who've reached out who don't want capital up front. What they want is to add this to their amenity mix, but not to receive capital up front because it's more expensive. If you receive it's actually more expensive if we advance you the capital and you have to start paying 6% day one, plus our per door fees higher. So there's a lot of owners are going to do this without needing an advance of capital. They're just going to create a pool and sell it to renters.
And they're going to tap into your app. That's the value you're going to do.
Yeah. So anybody can call. If 10 owners called us and we didn't want to advance that many deals at once, if we chose not to, we could say, great, just implement it. Pay the per door fee and let renters buy into this pool. You'll just set the cap, let's say at $100,000. We could do as many deals we can do infinite amount of those deals.
Gosh, that's really interesting. So what kind of marketing are you doing apart from being on podcasts like this one?
We haven't done any outbound marketing. We were featured in Fast Company a few weeks ago. The Hustle wrote about it. This is something that I've been really inspired by, like the love and light that people are pouring into this. This is resonating with people. The idea that every renter should be an owner is one that means something to people. And so that has been shared all around the world in multiple languages now in the past few weeks. And as a result, owners are calling us.
And you're all around the world, but you're primarily US, right? Calvin,
we're just in Columbus. We just launched in Columbus. We'll be all across the US in no time. That's why I said our biggest challenge is time. We've got to move quickly. Our vision is that every renter is an owner, and there's a lot of renters to serve. So we're just getting started.
So what is the impact of COVID? Have you noticed anything? Well, if you've just started, it must be difficult to really gauge it. But what do you think is perhaps the impact of that?
So now we can talk about that savings product that you brought up earlier. So that was an opportunity to learn. Last year we released a solution where owners could attract and retain renters through a savings match program. So the renters download our app. They contribute money into their account with us. It's a FDIC insured account out of All Bank. Renters can contribute, and every month, renters would earn a match from the property owner. And if the renter renewed their lease, then they unlock the match. So that's been in the market for a year. And we partnered with 7 different owners in town, thousands of units. And we were turning down deals in other cities because we really wanted to build out rentership. But what we found was that a lot of renters, regardless of property type, were able to download an app, link a bank account, and contribute to their savings account to get cash back from owners. And when the pandemic hit and when we went into lockdown in late March, a lot of people started to withdraw their funds. And that's because, as you know, millions of people are facing eviction, and they're wondering where their next paycheck's going to come from. If they were laid off, then they're waiting on unemployment checks. We don't have a very efficient system in the U.S. for getting people money when they need. Fortunately, residents that were participating with Rhove had more saved than the average American. So they started withdrawing their funds. It takes 7 days usually to withdraw through the ACH network. So we built a same-day ACH withdrawal mechanism within days so that people could pull their funds out. So we saw renters, a 15% decline in renters contributing to their account, and a lot of people withdrawing. And 3 months later, 4 months later, we have more renters now than we did before in that program, and people are contributing to their account again. So that's what we've seen, is an initial dip, and then now we're seeing a return to where we were. And that's just in Columbus. We've got a really strong economy locally here that's particularly resilient. But we'll see what happens yet ahead.
And when people contribute, you said that they vest when they renew, but presumably there are also conditions that require them to pay rent on time, not just.
Yeah, under that product. And so we learned a lot about renters. So the reason why we released the savings product was really just to learn. And what we learned was renters can participate regardless of their financial standing. And that, as we suspected, the renting population is just like the average American, doesn't have $400 saved for an emergency. And so it is critical that we have solutions that allow people to build capital. And so we're taking that to the next level with rentership. Imagine if everyone last recession was able to buy into their apartment community. Return, they participated. And if there was an event that disrupted their income, they'd be able to easily sell their stake through our app and pay their rent and take care of whatever else they needed. It's like home ownership, but completely liquid. You can tap it and use it for what you need to without being displaced.
Fascinating. So on the show notes page for today's podcast, I'm going to put every link that you want me to include so that anyone listening can find out more, because it's very interesting. I don't know how many listeners I have in Columbus, Ohio. Hopefully at least one, and that would be you. But hopefully there are more that might like to reach out to you. But if anybody does reach out, it may be from other parts of the country. So I'll just let you know that. In the meantime, let me wrap up, if you don't mind, because time being of the essence, I don't want to take up any more of I'm looking at the clock. I can't believe how much time we've already spent. I could talk to you all day. It's fascinating what you're doing. Let me ask you 3 sign-off questions, if you don't mind, that I ask all of my guests. And it does pertain specifically to online marketing and online syndication in some way, right? So my first question to you is, what is actually the hardest lesson? Let me start with this one. What's the hardest lesson you have learned online in your online life?
The hardest lesson I learned that I had to learn online had an answer that is offline. It's that the way to engage anywhere, including online, is first to engage yourself and be true to your authentic self. Find your center, your purpose. And if you lean into that, you're going to say weird things, but it's going to resonate with people all around the world. You're going to be not talking about real estate as an investment. You're going to be talking about democracy and John Adams, and that's going to resonate. So lean into your higher purpose and what problem you're trying to solve in the world.
That's very interesting. My second question is for somebody who is starting out a new business like you are, in this sense, right? And it's a fintech business, really, that you're in, obviously. What advice would you give them? What's the most important thing they should keep in mind? And it kind of dovetails into the hardest lesson that you just told me. But in terms of starting out, what's the most important thing they should keep in mind?
Keep in mind who your customer is and what problem you're solving. And so that's true for not just a startup or a fintech company. That's true in raising capital. When I was in venture capital, I raised funds. I helped our fund raise $50 million to invest in startups. And the way I went about it when I was young, had no experience, was first to think about who is this a win for? What problem are they trying to solve? And then finding and talking to 100 of those people instead of saying, I got this solution, give me money, and talk to everybody who you think can give you money. So start with who's your customer and what problem are you solving for them?
And my last question. So what are your key daily habits that keep you successful in the online world?
It's also offline. I work out and meditate. A lot of people just roll right into the work. And then you're all off center. You're not authentic. You're online, just moving from thing to thing. I like to start my day with my daily workout, meditating, and then thinking about what's the most important thing I can do today to solve the problem in the world that I'm trying to solve. That usually helps you get to the right answer.
Calvin, I absolutely love that your 3 answers to my questions about online are all about offline. I actually think that is sheer genius, seriously. The best thing you could possibly do to be successful online is get offline as often as possible.
Yes, that's a great summary. That is the absolute way to be successful online.
Calvin Cooper, co-founder of Rhove, R-H-O-V-E. What an enormous pleasure. I wish you the very best of luck. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and I can't wait to read your book.
It'll be out later this summer, all being well. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, Calvin. Take care. That was Calvin Cooper, co-founder and CEO at Rhove. Isn't that a fascinating idea? I think it's absolutely amazing that any apartment tenant can own a piece of the building that they're in and can save and invest in real estate that way. It's very, very interesting what he's done. Dying to see how that rolls out over time. Now, before I wrap up, remember, all your communications can be automated these days. So go to the podcast page at gowercrowd.com to find out more about Calvin and about Rhove. I've put all kinds of links there, and be sure to sign up on any of the lead generation forms that you find there. And if you like not just the content you get once you do that, but the way you got the content, right? The auto-delivered emails and the pop-up forms and the CTAs, etc. Let me know. And if you'd like me to, I'll show you how you can use the exact same systems to raise money for your own deals. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much for listening. And thank you, Calvin Cooper, co-founder and CEO at Rhove, for your time with me today. It was extremely interesting talking to you, and I can't wait. You must give me an update as things roll out, right? I hadn't actually realized how early in the history of your new startup I had actually contacted you. So I really wish you the very, very best of luck. Let's stay in touch. Let me know how everything works out. That is all for this episode. I'll see you next time. And in the meantime, stay well. And for now, this is Dr. Adam Gower signing off.